The darkened sky above Earth was split by the roar of warships descending from the stars. The Galactic Empire had arrived. Their fleet, the size of which no one on Earth had ever seen, filled the sky with an ominous presence. Thousands of battle-hardened soldiers, advanced weaponry, and war machines from across the galaxy had come to claim this small, unremarkable planet. Earth was a blip on their radar, just another world to be conquered. To the Empire, humans were nothing more than a primitive species far behind in both technology and military strength. Their planets had been consumed by the Empire without much resistance. Earth would be no different. Jace stood on the edge of the battlefield looking up at the skies. He was just one soldier among millions, but this fight felt different. There was a heavy silence, as if the whole world held its breath waiting for the first move. He adjusted his armor, making sure his weapon was secure. Despite the overwhelming numbers of the enemy, there was a certain unease among the human soldiers. They knew they were underdogs, but there was a strange sense of defiance that ran through their ranks. In the command center, the leaders of the Galactic Empire looked down on Earth with smug confidence. The Empire's intelligence had painted Earth as a weak target, and they were eager to wrap up this conquest. They believed that no defense could stand against them. Earth's military was outdated compared to the advanced weaponry and strategies of the Empire. The generals, dressed in their imposing black armor, reviewed the battle plans with smug certainty. They would crush Earth's defenses in a matter of days, if not hours. Meanwhile, Jace was stationed at a forward observation post, watching the Empire's forces land. The Empire's war machines rumbled through the Earth, tearing up the land. As they moved, huge transports dropped soldiers, their armored boots hitting the ground with a deep thud. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the first wave of battle began. The roar of engines and the shriek of laser fire filled the air, but Earth soldiers did not retreat. They stood firm. Jace tightened his grip on his rifle, but there was a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. Something didn't feel right. He had been through battles before, but there was a new sense of determination in the eyes of the soldiers around him. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their home, their families, and their future. As the battle raged on, the Empire's forces began to realize that Earth wasn't as easy a target as they had believed. The humans fought with a ferocity that the Empire hadn't anticipated. Their tactics were unpredictable, their resistance unwavering. Earth's soldiers fought with everything they had, using every scrap of knowledge and ingenuity at their disposal. The Empire's commanders began to grow uneasy. Their forces, once so confident, now struggled to maintain control. Earth's soldiers weren't following the usual rules of warfare. They weren't relying solely on technology or brute force. They were relying on something far more dangerous: human determination. Jace watched as an Empire soldier fell before him, his armor pierced by a well-placed shot. His heart raced. He didn't know if Earth could win this war, but one thing was certain: they weren't going down without a fight. The battle had begun in full force. The sky was filled with explosions, and the sounds of lasers firing as the Empire's soldiers stormed the Earth's defenses. The ground shook beneath Jace's boots as he crouched behind a mecha-shift barricade. The Earth forces were determined, but they were also vastly outnumbered. Jace could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, yet there was something in the air, something that made him believe this fight wasn't over yet. The first wave of the Galactic Empire's soldiers moved forward, their armored suits gleaming under the harsh light of battle. These soldiers, part of the Empire's elite, were trained to conquer and destroy. Their weapons were advanced, their tactics precise. But what they didn't account for was the unpredictability of human resistance. Jace watched as a squad of Empire soldiers advanced toward his position. The enemy had already started using advanced weaponry, plasma guns, and energy shields that could melt steel in seconds. But humanity's soldiers had something they didn't expect: creativity. Earth's forces had been preparing for this moment for years, using outdated equipment and tactics in unexpected ways. What the Empire saw as a disadvantage was actually an advantage. Jace took a deep breath and raised his rifle. With a steady hand, he fired, taking out one of the Empire's soldiers who had been charging toward his position. The shot was precise, But he wasn't done yet. His squad mates fired their rifles from behind cover, hitting their targets with surprising accuracy. The Empire's forces had advanced, but they had underestimated human ingenuity. The Empire soldiers regrouped, attempting to counterattack. But humanity's soldiers were relentless. Jace and his fellow soldiers used the terrain to their advantage, moving quickly through the buildings, alleyways, and forests. They knew their environment better than the Empire's soldiers, and they used it to create traps, ambushes, and distractions. The Empire's soldiers were caught off guard, unable to predict the humans' next move. The Empire's commanders watched in disbelief from their command center, struggling to understand why their forces weren't advancing as quickly as they had planned. Their troops were skilled, but the human resistance was turning out to be far more effective than they had anticipated. "We've underestimated them," one of the generals muttered. "We thought this would be easy." The general's voice crackled through the communications, urging his troops to adjust their tactics. But it was too late. The humans had already gained ground. Jace and his team continued to push forward, using every ounce of training and creativity they had. The Empire soldiers may have been more advanced, but Earth soldiers fought with a passion that could not be matched. Jace could see the fear in the eyes of the Empire soldiers as they realized they were not fighting a helpless, primitive species. They were fighting for their lives against an enemy who would not give up. The Empire was learning that this battle was not as simple as they had imagined. The first clash had ended in a draw, but the message was clear. Earth was not going to fall easily. It was just the beginning, and Jace knew that the fight ahead would be even tougher. But for now, the humans had made their mark. The Empire had underestimated them, and that mistake would cost them dearly. As the battle on the surface of Earth raged on, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this war than just what was happening on the front lines. Despite the relentless attacks from the Empire, the humans had been holding their own, but there were whispers among the soldiers, whispers of something hidden deep beneath the surface, something that the Empire had no idea about. Jace was stationed in a remote area, far from the heart of the fighting. It was there, in the shadows, that he was called to join a covert mission. The mission was a mystery to him at first. He had been briefed only with a simple message: "Go to the underground facility, find out what we have, and make sure the Empire doesn't learn of it." He was joined by a small team of highly trained soldiers. The journey to the facility took them through abandoned tunnels beneath the ruins of old cities. Jace couldn't help but wonder what secrets were buried here, deep within the earth. The deeper they went, the more the air grew heavy, as if the very ground held something important, something that had been waiting for this moment. After what felt like hours, they reached the entrance to the facility. It was hidden beneath a thick layer of earth, surrounded by layers of security that the Empire never bothered to check. Jace felt the weight of the situation. Whatever was inside this facility was humanity's last card, their secret weapon. Inside the facility, the soldiers were stunned. The walls were lined with advanced technology, machines that seemed to pulse with life. As Jace explored the area, he found rows upon rows of warships, weapons, and armor that far exceeded the Empire's own technology. But it wasn't just the technology that caught his attention, it was the history. This place had been built centuries ago, long before the Empire ever set their sights on Earth. The facility contained blueprints for weapons and ships that humanity had developed in secret. These were not just ordinary designs. They were far beyond what the Empire had ever expected from a species like humans. Hidden away, the Earth had been preparing for this very moment, an awakening of their true power. Jace's team was speechless. They had no idea that Earth had such a powerful force lying dormant, waiting for the right time to strike. The leader of Jace's team, Captain Lara, looked at him with a grim expression. "This is it," she said quietly. "This is what we've been hiding from the Empire, and it's time to use it." Jace nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities. They weren't just fighting with what the Empire had seen so far. Earth had been preparing for a war like this for generations, and now they were ready to show the Empire the true strength of humanity. But Jace also felt a heavy responsibility. The mission ahead was no longer about defending Earth. It was about changing the course of the war. They were about to reveal to the Empire that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. Jace knew the consequences would be immense, and the risks even greater. But he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Earth was not a helpless planet. It was a force to be reckoned with. As the team prepared to activate the hidden weapons, Jace took one last look around the facility. The battle for Earth was far from over, but now, with this new power at their disposal, humanity had a chance to turn the tide in their favor. The Empire had always been known for its dominance, its military strength unmatched across the galaxy. But now something was happening that none of them could have predicted. From the comfort of their high-tech command centers, the Empire's leaders had been watching the war unfold on Earth. They had expected an easy victory, but what they saw instead was a planet that fought back with a power and determination that left them questioning their initial assumptions. Commander Zalzar stood before the large holographic map in the command room, his fingers gripping the edge of the console. The Empire's forces had been hit hard. The initial onslaught had been met with fierce resistance, and despite their technological superiority, the humans were not backing down. "They are fighting like never before," Zalzar muttered, his voice low but filled with disbelief. "What are they hiding? How are they still holding out?" His officers exchanged uneasy glances. The Empire had never encountered a species like this before. Humans, they had thought, were primitive. Their weapons and technology were outdated compared to the Empire's vast arsenal. Yet the more they fought, the more it became clear that Earth's military was not simply using old technology. They were using their environment, their ingenuity, and a level of unpredictability that was shaking the very foundation of the Empire's plans. "We underestimated them, Commander," one of the officers said, a look of frustration in his eyes. "They should have fallen by now. This isn't just about tactics, it's about something else." Zalzar took a deep breath, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. His fleet had suffered losses. Ships had been damaged, and Empire soldiers had been taken down in ways that defied all standard military logic. Even now, reports came in from the front lines of surprise ambushes, traps, and unexpected counterattacks. Earth's forces were everywhere, on the ground, in the sky, and even in the depths of space. "They've known more about us than we realized," Zalzar said, his voice growing cold with realization. "This isn't just a battle, they're prepared. Earth's military might be old, but they have more up their sleeves, and it's not just about weapons." At that moment, a new report came in, and it was the final confirmation Zalzar needed. Earth's forces had activated a hidden fleet, one that was far more advanced than anything they had seen so far. The technology they had uncovered was powerful, rivaling even the best of the Empire's own. The hidden force Earth had kept secret for generations was now in play. "Prepare the fleet for full engagement," Zalzar ordered, though his voice lacked the usual confidence. "We need to end this now, or we risk everything." But deep down, he knew that the game had changed. The humans had just revealed their true strength. The Empire's intelligence had been completely off. The fleet they had seen before, Earth's so-called weak army, wasn't their full force. The true threat had been kept hidden, ready to strike when the time was right. Zalzar clenched his fists. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a disaster waiting to happen. The Empire had thought they were unbeatable. They had thought Earth would fall without a fight. But they were about to learn the hard way that underestimating humanity was a mistake they would regret. "Contact the generals," Zalzar said. "Tell them to prepare for a full-scale assault. We will break Earth's defenses. This time we'll bring the fight to them." But even as he gave the orders, a small part of him doubted the outcome. Earth had just shown the Empire that they were far more than just a target to conquer. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the war was far from over. The news had spread like wildfire through the ranks of Earth's military. Their hidden weapon, the one that could turn the tide of the war, was ready for deployment. But Jace had no time to think about the implications of what was coming next. He was part of the team that had been selected for a critical mission, a mission that could either save Earth or doom it to fall under the Empire's control forever. The orders came directly from Captain Lara. She was a leader known for her calm under pressure, but even she had a look of concern in her eyes. The gravity of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. "Jace, we need you to head to the launch site. We've just received confirmation our full fleet is ready, but we can't let the Empire know where it's coming from. You'll be leading the team to activate the ships. Without you, we can't even begin." Jace nodded, his mind racing. He had no idea what was waiting for him out there, but he knew one thing: Earth's fate rested in his hands. The hidden fleet was their last chance, and now it was his responsibility to ensure that it was activated and ready to fight. He set out with a small team, traveling through hidden tunnels and over rugged terrain to reach the launch site. The landscape was alien to him, filled with old ruins and forgotten structures. These were remnants of a time before the Empire had ever come to Earth, a time when humanity's ancestors had known the threat of invasion and had worked tirelessly to prepare for it. As they traveled, Jace's thoughts were consumed by the enormity of the task ahead. He had trained for moments like this, but there was no training that could prepare him for what was coming. This was no longer just a battle between two armies. This was the final stand. The mission was simple in theory: activate the fleet, launch the counterattack, and take down the Empire's forces. But in reality, it was far more complex. The Empire was already closing in on Earth's remaining strongholds. Their forces were relentless, and the fleet that had once seemed so distant was now just within reach. But Jace wasn't afraid. In fact, for the first time in a long while, he felt something else: hope. As they neared the site, the team moved with urgency. They didn't have much time. The Empire's fleet was larger than they could have imagined, but humanity's secret weapons were a level of force that no one, not even the Empire, could have prepared for. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future. When they arrived at the launch site, Jace could see the massive warships lined up, their sleek forms almost glowing in the dim light of the underground base. The ships were built for one purpose: to annihilate. Their technology was far beyond what the Empire had seen from Earth. These were ships built by humans for humans, crafted in secret and hidden away until the moment was right. Jace's team worked quickly, setting up the activation protocols. As they worked, Jace couldn't help but feel the weight of history on his shoulders. The world had been waiting for this moment for generations. The fight for Earth's survival had begun long before he was born, and now it was his turn to play a part in the story. "Everything's set," said one of his team members, breaking him from his thoughts. Jace nodded, his heart pounding. He had activated the ship's systems, but this was only the beginning. With the press of a button, Earth's secret fleet would rise, and the Empire would know that the humans they had underestimated were not finished yet. "Let's make sure they never forget what happens when you mess with humanity," Jace muttered, under his breath. The final preparations were made. The countdown had begun. Earth's last chance was now in motion. The battle was far from over. As Jace and his team completed the activation of Earth's hidden fleet, the real fight was just beginning. The Empire's forces, confident in their superiority, were now discovering that they had underestimated humanity at every turn. The tide was shifting, and the Empire was struggling to keep up with the unexpected resistance. Back at the command center, Commander Zalzar paced in frustration. His fleet had expected an easy victory, but now they were facing a challenge they hadn't prepared for. The reports were coming in fast and furious. Earth's forces were everywhere. What had once seemed like a small, isolated resistance was now a coordinated effort, striking in ways the Empire couldn't predict. "Where are they coming from?" Zalzar demanded, his voice sharp. "We have intelligence on their positions, but every time we move, they're already one step ahead." The Empire's high-ranking officers were beginning to panic. Their perfectly organized plans were unraveling. They had relied too heavily on their advanced technology and their overwhelming numbers, never imagining that a planet like Earth could fight back with such ingenuity. Yet here they were, caught in a web of traps, ambushes, and unexpected strikes that were costing them precious time and resources. Jace, meanwhile, was already back in the fight. His heart raced as he took command of the team, coordinating attacks against the Empire's front lines. The newly activated fleet had begun to rise from Earth's secret base, their massive engines roaring to life. The ships, once hidden beneath the surface, now launched into the sky with a force that made the ground tremble. The Empire's forces had no idea what was coming. The first wave of Earth's fleet made its presence known in space. These ships, built with technology that the Empire had never seen before, unleashed a barrage of firepower that left the Empire's ships in disarray. The Empire's advanced warships, which had once been feared across the galaxy, now found themselves outclassed. Earth's fleet, though smaller in number, was swift, precise, and powerful. They moved with the grace of a predator hunting its prey. Back on the ground, Jace and his team fought through the chaos, pushing back against the Empire's soldiers. The resistance was everywhere, on rooftops and alleyways and even underground. Earth's forces were using every advantage they could find. They knew the terrain better than the Empire and fought with a determination that the invaders couldn't match. But the Empire wasn't going down without a fight. Zalzar ordered his forces to retaliate, sending in more troops, more advanced weapons, and reinforcements from across the galaxy. But with each move, the humans countered. Every attempt to crush the resistance seemed to meet an unanticipated response, and the Empire's soldiers began to grow more frustrated. The Empire's soldiers were skilled, but their biggest flaw was their predictability. They expected Earth's forces to fall in line with traditional warfare tactics, but humanity was anything but predictable. They fought with desperation, with a deep-rooted need to protect their homes, families, and way of life. The Empire's soldiers, who had seen countless planets fall before them, were now experiencing something they hadn't prepared for, a true fight for survival. Zalzar, watching from his command center, began to understand the magnitude of his mistake. Earth was not the easy conquest he had envisioned. The humans had not only fought back, they had adapted, evolved, and fought smarter. The Empire's forces, though vast, were losing ground. "We need to end this now," Zalzar muttered to himself, "before they show us just how far they've come." The realization hit hard. The Empire's once certain victory was slipping away, and Earth was showing them that no matter how advanced their technology, they could never defeat the will of a people fighting for their home. The war between the Galactic Empire and Earth had escalated quickly. What began as a simple invasion had turned into a struggle neither side had predicted. The Empire's forces, once sure of their inevitable victory, now found themselves fighting a desperate, clever enemy, and the worst was yet to come. Commander Zalzar sat at his command console, his eyes fixed on the chaotic battle unfolding across the galaxy. He had ordered reinforcements, launched counterattacks, and even deployed the most advanced weapons the Empire had. Yet every move seemed to be countered by Earth's forces, and the human resistance was growing stronger by the day. The shock of the humans' fight back had left the Empire reeling, but what was about to happen next would shake the Empire to its core. "I don't understand," Zalzar muttered, running his fingers through his hair. "How could they be doing this? How could they have prepared for this kind of war?" His officers, equally frustrated, watched as reports continued to flood in. Each update brought more bad news. Earth's newly activated fleet had already decimated half of the Empire's outer defenses. Their ships, far more powerful than anything the Empire had seen on Earth, were tearing through the Empire's warships like they were nothing more than paper. "We've been blind," one officer said, his voice trembling with realization. "We thought they were just a primitive race. We never thought they'd be capable of this." Zalzar looked up, his face pale as the truth began to dawn on him. "The fleet. Earth's full strength isn't what we've seen so far. This is just the beginning." It was then that they received the most unexpected communication. A message from an anonymous source directed only to the highest command. The message was brief but devastating. "You thought you saw the best of us. You were wrong. Earth's true fleet has just begun to fight. Prepare for what comes next." The words hit the Empire's leaders like a slap to the face. The shockwave of fear rippled through the room. Salazar's pulse quickened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. All this time, the Empire had been fighting a fraction of Earth's true military power. Everything they had faced so far, all the battles they thought they had won, had been nothing compared to the full might of humanity. The implications were staggering. Earth had kept their ultimate weapon hidden, waiting for the right moment to unleash it. And now, that moment had arrived. On Earth's side, Jace stood with his team aboard one of the newly activated ships, watching as the massive warships moved into position. He had seen the devastation the fleet could cause, but even he had underestimated the sheer scale of the operation. The fleet was vast, too large for the Empire to even fathom. "It's time," Captain Lara said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "The Empire thought they were facing our best. Now, they'll see what we've been keeping, hidden all this time." The massive fleet moved out, Earth's ships forming a perfect line in space. They weren't just powerful, they were unstoppable. Each ship had been built to deliver a crushing blow to the Empire's forces, and they were about to make their mark. The first wave of human warships entered the Empire's space, and the effects were immediate. The Empire's remaining fleet tried to fight back, but they were no match for Earth's hidden force. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning. The shock of the Empire's failure spread quickly through their ranks, and the realization began to sink in. Earth was not the weak, helpless planet they had believed it to be. Salazar's face turned ashen. He had been wrong. The humans had held back their true power, and now the Empire was paying the price for their underestimation. Earth's full military might had finally come to light, and the Empire was unprepared for what they had unleashed. "They were never going to lose," Salazar said quietly, more to himself than anyone else in the room. "This was never a fight. It was a warning." As the human fleet pushed forward, Jace couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. This was it. The moment humanity had waited for. The Empire would never forget that Earth was not to be underestimated. And from this point on, they would remember one truth above all. Humanity was not their prey. They were the predators now. The battle had shifted from desperation to domination. Earth's newly activated fleet had turned the tide, and the Galactic Empire was now fighting to keep its hold on the galaxy. But the more they resisted, the more it became clear that Earth was not the weak planet they had once believed. Earth was fighting with a fury they had never seen before, and they were winning. Jace stood at the helm of one of Earth's most powerful warships, watching as the Empire's forces scrambled to mount a defense. The massive warship, the Vanguard, glided through space like a predator hunting its prey. Jace's eyes were focused on the battle ahead, but his mind was still reeling from the shock of how quickly everything had changed. Less than a week ago, Earth had been on the brink of destruction. Now, Earth's fleet was taking the fight to the Empire, and there was no turning back. "We're pushing them back," Captain Lara said, her voice steady as she observed the data screens flashing before her. "The Empire's defenses are crumbling. The Empire's once imposing fleet, a vast and powerful collection of warships, was now struggling to hold its ground against the onslaught of Earth's forces. The ships, which had been built for conquest and domination, were now outmatched and outgunned. Earth's hidden weapons, their ships designed with advanced technology, far beyond what the Empire had expected, were making quick work of the Empire's fleet. Jace's pulse quickened as he gave the order to fire. The massive cannons on the Vanguard roared to life, launching a devastating wave of energy that tore through an enemy warship. The explosion lit up the dark expanse of space, a brilliant flash of light that marked the beginning of the Empire's defeat. Earth was not just fighting back, they were making sure the Empire would never forget this lesson. "This is what they get for underestimating us," Jace said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "This is just the beginning." As the battle raged on, the Empire's commanders scrambled to adjust their tactics. But it was too late. The human fleet, with its superior technology and unrelenting will, was unstoppable. Earth's soldiers fought with everything they had, and they fought smart. They knew the Empire's strategies, and they used that knowledge to exploit weaknesses at every turn. On the ground, Earth's forces were equally relentless. The Empire's troops, once confident and powerful, now found themselves surrounded and outnumbered. Earth's soldiers had taken back cities, fortified positions, and pushed the Empire to the edge. They used everything at their disposal, every resource, every scrap of technology, and every ounce of strength to hold their ground. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. Zalzar, the Empire's commander, watched in horror as the tide of the battle turned against him. His once proud fleet was in disarray, and his forces were retreating. The humans had been underestimated, and now the consequences of that mistake were becoming clear. There was no way to reverse the damage that had been done. The humans had won. "Fall back," Zalzar ordered, his voice tight with frustration. "We can't win this fight. Get the fleet out of here. We need to regroup." But even as the retreat order was given, Zalzar knew it was too late. Earth had already made its mark on the galaxy. The Empire had underestimated humanity's strength, and now it was too late for them to recover. Earth had struck back, and they had done so with a force that would never be forgotten. As Jace watched the Empire's ships retreat, a sense of pride swelled in his chest. Earth had fought back. They had won. And the galaxy would know from now on, never underestimate humanity. The war had reached its boiling point. Earth's forces had dealt a devastating blow to the Galactic Empire. But the fight was far from over. The Empire, though battered, was not yet broken. Commander Zalzar had retreated, regrouped, and was preparing for one final attempt to crush humanity's resistance. The battle for Earth was about to enter its most critical phase. Jace stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, Earth's flagship, staring out into the vastness of space. The enemy fleet was in full retreat, but Jace knew they couldn't let up. Zalzar's forces were gathering for one last strike, one final push to regain control. If Earth was to survive, they needed to end this once and for all. "We've got one shot at this," Captain Lara said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "If we fail, the Empire will strike back with everything they have." Jace nodded, his mind focused. The Empire's fleet was massive, but Earth's newly activated ships had the advantage of surprise and innovation. Earth's military, though outnumbered, had fought with everything they had. It had come down to this final confrontation. "Prepare for full engagement," Jace ordered, his voice clear. "We end this now." As Earth's fleet moved into position, the Empire's forces made their final stand. The once great warships of the Empire lined up in battle formation, ready to strike with overwhelming force. But they were not the same fleet they had once been. Many ships had been destroyed, and the survivors were weary, their crews stretched thin. The battle began with a roar as the two fleets collided. The sheer force of the exchange shook the stars themselves. Lasers, missiles, and energy blasts lit up the dark expanse of space as Earth's fleet charged forward, firing with all the power they had. The Empire's ships fought back, but they were no match for Earth's relentless assault. Jace's pulse quickened as he issued commands, coordinating the movements of Earth's fleet. The ships, once seen as outdated, were now the pinnacle of human ingenuity. Their weapons tore through the Empire's defenses, and the once unstoppable force of the Empire began to falter. "Target the command ship," Jace ordered. Zalzar's flagship, the Revenge, was the heart of the Empire's forces. If they could take it down, the rest of the fleet would fall apart. The Empire's morale would be shattered. The Vanguard's weapons fired with precision, hitting the Revenge's shields and weakening its defenses. The enemy commander, Zalzar, watched from his bridge as his fleet was slowly torn apart. He knew this was the end. "We cannot let them win," Zalzar shouted, his voice filled with fury. "Fight to the last ship." But it was too late. Earth's fleet had already breached the Revenge's defenses. A massive explosion rocked the flagship as its core was hit directly. The shockwave rippled through the battlefield, and for a moment, both sides were blinded by the flash of light. When the smoke cleared, the Revenge was gone. The remaining Empire ships, leaderless and shattered, began to retreat. The battle was over. Jace watched from the bridge as the Empire's fleet scattered, their once proud ships fleeing into the vast unknown. Earth had won. The final battle had been fought, and the Empire was defeated. As the last of the enemy ships disappeared into the distance, Jace allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The war was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was not to be underestimated. The Empire had learned that lesson the hard way. The fight for Earth was over, but Jace knew this was only the beginning for humanity. They had proven their strength, and now they would stand as equals among the stars. The galaxy would never forget the day Earth fought back and won. The battlefield was eerily silent as Earth's forces stood victorious. The remnants of the once proud Galactic Empire's fleet drifted in the darkness of space, their commanders scattered, their power broken. Earth had won. But as Jace looked out into the vast expanse of stars, he couldn't shake the weight of the journey. The war had cost them everything, but in the end, humanity had proven something far more important, that they could stand against anyone, and they would never back down. As the last of the enemy ships fled into the unknown, Jace stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the destruction unfold. The battle was over, but the war had changed everything. Earth's military might, once underestimated, had become a force to be reckoned with. But it wasn't just the weapons or the technology that had won them this victory. It was humanity's unyielding spirit. "We did it," Captain Lara said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." Jace nodded, but his mind was already racing. The battle had been won, but the consequences of their victory were still unknown. Earth had just taken its first step into a larger, more dangerous galaxy, and the question now was not whether they could survive, but how they would thrive. "We've shown them who we are," Jace said quietly, "but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." As Earth's forces began to clean up the remnants of the battle, Jace couldn't help but think about the cost. Thousands of lives had been lost, families torn apart, cities destroyed. But the resilience of humanity had shone through. They had fought for their survival, their homes, and their future, and they had emerged victorious. The Empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had crumbled before Earth's might. The survivors of the Empire's fleet, scattered and broken, would have to answer for their actions. But as Jace watched the stars, he couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold. The galaxy was vast, and there were other threats out there. Earth had made powerful enemies, but it had also made powerful allies. With their victory, humanity had proven they were not just a young and fragile species. They were a force that could change the course of history. They had the power to shape the future. In the days that followed, Earth's leaders began to rebuild. Cities were reconstructed, and the human race began to heal from the wounds of war. But there was also a sense of anticipation. Earth had earned the respect of the galaxy, and now it would step onto the galactic stage as an equal. Jace stood with Captain Lara on the bridge of the Vanguard, looking out at the stars. The war was over, but the challenges ahead were just beginning. Earth had fought for its future, and now it was time to build it. "We've earned our place in the stars," Jace said, his voice filled with pride. "But we'll never forget how we got here." As Earth's ships sailed back into orbit, Jace knew that humanity's story was only just beginning. They had faced the impossible and come out on top. Now, with the whole galaxy watching, they would define their future, not through conquest, but through strength, unity, and resilience. The Empire had fallen, and Earth, once thought weak and insignificant, had proven it was a force that would shape the future of the stars.